Alright, so now that I got my extra paper and we got some space here, we're looking at this reaction with 40 milliliters of 6 molar HCl, 50 milliliters of 2.5 molar barium hydroxide. So balanced equation is all set up, and what we really need to do is we need to figure out the limiting reactant. So which one of these reactants is going to run out first? Since HCl is first, I'll probably do a stoichiometry from hydrochloric acid to the barium hydroxide, and we'll see who ends up with more. Remember, if I find, when I do the stoichiometry, you got to remember what the stoichiometries are telling you. I'm going to do a stoichiometry from HCl to barium hydroxide. If it tells me that with the 40 milliliters of HCl that I have, if at the end I get, and I figure out how much barium hydroxide I'm supposed to have, and it tells me you need 40 milliliters of barium hydroxide, well, I'll look and I'll see that I have 50. I've got extra. So that would then tell me that barium hydroxide is not my limiting reactant, and HCl is. But if I do the stoichiometry, and I go from HCl to barium hydroxide, and it says, well, you need 60 or 65 or 70 milliliters of barium hydroxide, and I look and I'm like, oh, well, I've got 50. That tells me barium hydroxide is my limiting reactant. So let's figure out what actually we've got here. Okay, so I've got 0.040 liters of HCl. Set up my problem here. And I know for the HCl, every 1 liter of HCl that I have, I've got 6 moles of HCl. Okay. I also know that I want to jump from HCl to barium hydroxide, so I'm going to use my mole-to-mole ratio in the problem, 2-to-1 ratio in the problem, to do that. So I know I've got 2 moles of HCl for every 1 mole of barium hydroxide. Okay? Then, again, using the information from the problem, I got 2.5 molar barium hydroxide. I'm going to go from moles of barium hydroxide. Moles of barium hydroxide has to go down here to liters, because I don't have grams in the problem. There's no grams here. It's all milliliters. And the only way I can get to liters is if I use that molarity. Okay? So I know that I have 2.5 moles of barium hydroxide if I have 1 liter of barium hydroxide. Okay? So, liters cancels out with liters of HCl. Moles cancels out with moles of HCl. Moles of barium hydroxide cancels out and brings you to liters of barium hydroxide. This is going to give me a number that I can compare to what's in the problem. So once I do this calculation, 0.040 times 6 divided by 2 divided by 2.5, I end up getting this, 0.048. Now remember, this is in liters of barium hydroxide. Alright, I'm going to multiply this by 1,000 so I can get milliliters, and that's going to give me 48 milliliters of barium hydroxide. Okay, so this is a number that I'm going to use right now to figure out what my limiting reactant is. Well, how much barium hydroxide do I actually have? Well, if I look, I've got 50 milliliters. Oh, okay, so remember, this problem is saying, alright man, you want to use up all 40 milliliters of HCl, you're going to need 48 milliliters of barium hydroxide. Okay, well, how much do I actually have? I've got 50 right here in the problem. Alright, so I guess barium hydroxide, I have an excess, it's extra. So this is not my limiting reactant. It's going to be this HCl, that's my limiting reactant. So now I can take and actually figure out the problem here. And it's asking me how many grams of barium chloride will be formed. So I'm going to go from HCl now to barium chloride because I know HCl is my limiting reactant. I'm just going to write a little LR right here. That's my limiting reactant. So let's do that. stoichiometry right below it. So I'm going to take my 0.040 liters of HCl, set my problem up again, and I'm going to go from HCl, 1 liter of HCl has 6 moles of HCl. And of course this time I'm going to barium chloride, so 2 moles of HCl is to 1 mole of barium chloride. And again, just confirming that, you can see that right here in the balanced equation, 2 HCl's for every 1 barium chloride. And then this time, since it's asking me for grams, how many grams of barium chloride will be formed? There are actually 2 questions here. How many grams of barium chloride will be formed is one question, and then it tells you, hey, the only other product is water, right? You've got the total volume of the solution. What's the molarity going to be? What they're saying here is, look at this. You're making barium chloride, and you're going to make this stuff in water. You're actually going to make a solution of barium chloride in water. Well, what's the molarity going to be? So after you figure out how many grams of barium chloride you have, and you know how much water you have. How do you know how much water you have? Well, look, 50 milliliters of this stuff, barium hydroxide, plus 40 milliliters of this stuff, hydrochloric acid. 50 plus 40 is going to give you 90 milliliters total. So we'll be able to use that later. So let's finish off finding out how many grams of barium chloride we have. Alright, 1 mole of barium chloride, okay, is 208 grams of barium chloride. Little tubes there. So if I do this calculation, I get 225 grams of barium chloride. So this is how many grams of barium chloride I have. That answers question number 1 in the problem. Alright? The next question asks me, well, what's the molarity of this stuff? And this should be pretty simple. It's just like last problem set. I'm going to do that right here. Since I know I have 25 grams of barium chloride, and I know that it's not grams per liter. Remember, we're trying to find molarity, which is not grams per liter, but it's moles per liter. And I've got 0.090 liters of this stuff. All right, I just made my milliliters from the problem into liters. I can go from my grams, 208 grams of barium chloride, to moles of barium chloride. And look what happens. Cancel out the grams. I've got moles per liter now, and I'm all set. 25 divided by 0.090 divided by 208 is going to give me 1.3 molar barium chloride. So this is my answer for part 2. This is my answer for part 1 right here. It's a big stoichiometry problem. Takes a little bit of time. I'll leave the last one for you and let you know here that for some answers there. I leave that last one for you and get that answer to you here in just a little bit. Okay? Hope that helps out.